Welcome back, everyone. We are going to be talking about anaerobic glycolysis, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Now, we have muscle glycogen, right? OGen means that you have glucose stored there, right? Glucose can be stored in muscle and it can be stored in the liver. So, muscle glycogen can be broken down into glucose, right? Remember, glucose looks like this. All it is a 6-carbon sugar. Now glycolysis takes place and you split that in half. Okay? And if we do that, let's see if I can eraser. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Okay. When this 6-carbon sugar is split, you end up getting 2 3-carbon sugars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's because this bond here and here is removed and this one's removed. Okay. So this is called pyruvic acid. You get 2-pyruvic acid. Now, if oxygen is available, pyruvic acid is going to go into the mitochondria and you go to aerobic respiration. But if oxygen is not available, pyruvic acid becomes lactic acid. Okay. Now, lactic acid can be recycled back into glucose. We call this the cori cycle. The cori cycle is the removal and the recycling of lactic acid by the liver. The liver converts lactic acid or lactate back to pyruvate. And then glucose is released to recharge the muscle glycogen reserves. So here's muscle. We have glucose. Glucose goes through glycolysis, and now we get pyruvate. But now we don't have oxygen available. So pyruvate gets converted into lactic acid or lactate. Lactate's going to go into the liver. The liver is going to use the same enzyme, lactate dehydrogenase, that converted pyruvate to lactate, is the same exact enzyme that converts lactate back to pyruvate. Now, when we break glucose down, it's called glycolysis or glycolysis. When we go from pyruvate and we're creating glucose, that's gluconeogenesis. We're making new glucose. So from lactate back to pyruvate, back to glucose. This is called the cori cycle. Okay. Now, cellular respiration under aerobic conditions, the pyruvic acid can enter the mitochondria and it undergoes a series of oxygen requiring reactions in order to make ATP. So we have pyruvate from glycolysis that can enter the Krebs cycle. We have fatty acids that are liberated from fat that can enter the Krebs cycle. We just call them triglycerides, TG. And then we have amino acids from protein that can enter the Krebs cycle. The oxygen from the hemoglobin in the blood is going to be utilized to help oxidize a lot of that glucose. And within the mitochondria, remember, we have the Krebs cycle and we have the electron transport chain. And from that, we're going to produce lots of energy. We're going to give off CO2 and water. And of course, you give off some heat. Okay, that is cellular respiration. Now, what creates muscle fatigue? Muscle fatigue is the inability to maintain the force of contraction for long periods of time. So one of the things that can cause fatigue is inadequate release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That can create fatigue. What if you have depletion of creatine phosphate? What if you have depletion of oxygen? What if you're depleted of iron or CoQ10 or magnesium or B vitamins? You can have a buildup of lactic acid and a buildup of ADP. What if you don't have enough neurotransmitter at the neuromuscular junction? All these things can create fatigue now that you understand some of the physiology. So what happens when you're exercising, you're huffing and puffing, right? When you're exercising, you're huffing and puffing, you're pausing at that time. There's a pause or a break to try and pay back your oxygen debt. And the extra oxygen is going to go to replenishing creatine phosphate stores. It's going to convert lactate into pyruvate. Remember that cori cycle that we spoke about before. And it's going to reload the oxygen back into the myoglobin.